From the center of the universe, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, this is the SDM Show with your host, Rob Cairns. The SDM Show focuses on business, life, productivity, digital marketing, WordPress, and more. Sit back, relax, grab your favorite drink, and enjoy the show. Here is Rob.
Hey everybody, I'm Rob Cairns. I'm the founder, CEO, and chief creator of Amazing Ideas at Stunning Digital Marketing. In this podcast, I sit down with my good friend and colleague, Ryan Waterbury, for our monthly segment, and we're going to talk all things copyright. This is one conversation you don't want to miss. Grab your favorite drink, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. This podcast is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing agency for all your business needs. We are also your WordPress security experts, having over 14 years of experience locking down, backing up, and protecting WordPress websites. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com for more info, or stunningdigitalmarketing.info for links to everywhere we can be found on the web. Hey everybody, Rob Cairns here. And in today's podcast, I'm here with my monthly co-host, Mr. Ryan Waterbury. How are you today, Ryan?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing?
Coming out of an asthma flare, but, that's typical for this time of year. The long weekend at the time of this record is coming, and I see an air show and the Canadian National Exhibition in my future. So life is good there. And how are you doing?
Yeah. Coming off of pneumonia, got my voice back, got my lungs back, so I'm able to do the podcast, which I'm happy about. So.
Yeah. I am sure you are, as you smile away. And I don't hear any office staff today. Have they decided to disappear, or do I even?
They've been well exercised today. So
For those who don't know, office staff in Ryan's case are a couple of, can I use the word mutt? Because I think that kind of faces hunting dogs, whatever you want to call them. Right?
Oh, yeah, my sporting dogs. High energy pains in my butt.
So, anyway, today I thought we'd dive into the world of copyright. And from a couple different angles. First angle is assets. Second is what the client owns. Third of all is what clients should and shouldn't do. And I think AI is kind of complicated this. I read an interesting article today, ruling from U.S. courts that you can no longer copyright AI-generated artwork. Isn't that interesting? The courts are not having it.
I did find that interesting, and that's also unfortunate.
Yes.
I'm in a little bit of a disagreement there, because you with your prompting are guiding the artificial intelligence to produce something. You're in direct control of its initiations. So that was a disappointing ruling.
No, I would agree with you if you created it. So when you think about it, we've had AI in photo tools before it was called AI. Translation, Photoshop brushes. They're really AI type tools to do things. I did some work last week, interestingly enough, where I took a photo of Leslie. And it was a retirement photo, and it was done on an ugly green background. And I mean, not green, brown, sorry. And it was just ugly. And she said, can you do something? I love the picture of me. I don't like the background. Can you do something? And I flipped it into an AI tool and said, so change the background from green to like a sky blue. which in an AI tool is easy, right? You push one
Hmm.
button, specify the hex code of the color, you specify another, done. And so does that mean because of this art rule, I don't own that photo anymore? Like,
I that where it ends is it we won't know until somebody really
mhm,
challenges these laws and rulings and really gets specific on it. And part of the unfortunate part is, I don't use AI when I write,
yeah,
to write for me. I actually write, and I tend to write long sentences. So
mm,
it will, I have it set up and an assist tool that all of a sudden, if I'm writing a little bit too long, it will highlight and give me a suggestion
yeah,
to truncate the sentence and be more concise,
yeah,
which, well, is it not mine anymore, or is it? And I think there's going to be a ruling eventually coming down on when we come to writing in particular on a threshold and a percentage threshold of AI versus human input to be recognized as an original copyrightable or trademarkable piece of work.
yeah. So true. And then I'll go one more further. Let's go to a common tool we all use, Grammarly. That's an AI based tool.
Yep.
So because he
Oh
used
yeah.
Grammarly to spell check, do I not own my content? Like, I think that's, or even more so because he used to spell check in Microsoft Word. Do I not own my content? Like, I'm being
Right.
facetious here, but I'm being serious, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, Google is linking in more AI with Docs right
Mm,
inside Google Docs.
yeah, no question.
Um, yeah. I mean, I've used AI when I've been doing client writing, and normally, I'd use an SEO tool to uh, help me create a writing brief
Yeah,
and identify proper headlines, topic headlines, and then I'd start writing, and then I'd use the assist
yeah,
to really get some of the meat and the specifics from the niche from the AI, and then I would polish it for voice. But uh, at what point, that's where I say threshold. Um,
mm,
it's how much of it did I put in versus how much of it did the AI put in. And,
yeah.
you know, I use Lingwix versus Grammarly, and that's the one that assists my grammar. But yeah, I absolutely think you own that piece of work. You're the author. You're originating it. It's not. It's it's nothing more than having an editor come in and do minor rewrites and mark up your first draft.
Yeah,
This is, just a smart way to add people to your team, with AI. In my opinion, you're adding an editor, someone else giving your work another look before you hit publish.
I agree with you 100%. And along the subject of copyright, before we get into, client do's and don'ts, on how to protect the clients versus the designer owning the copyright, let's talk images for a sec, because that's one of my favorite subjects. People like to go to images.google.com and they do a search for an image and they assume because it's on the internet, they can use it until they find out they get a little cease and desist from a company called Getty Images. And those who don't know,
Exactly.
Getty's probably the biggest news image company on the world. They also have a pile of patent troll lawyers. And all they do is search websites to say, did you use our image without consent or paying for it? And if you haven't,
Hmm.
the bills can be astronomical. I have a client right now who's facing a $5,000 bill for using one image. And Getty's basically told them, um, you can pay the 5,000 and we can take you to court, and we will take you to court and we'll get more than that. We need to tell clients to stop using images they don't know. Very simple.
It, exactly. In a build, when I talk with clients, I have accounts with deposit photos, Adobe
Hmm.
stock, which pulls from Getty. So I don't like to go there often. But I let them know that if they want stock images, here's the library that you can pick from. And
Yeah.
there's no reason that they can't find what they're looking for. But I'm very specific about that. So when we select images, I make a note within the project map on what page it went on, what resource it came from, and who owns it, whether the client
Hmm.
purchased it or whether it's from my licensing. And that way, when someone comes along and says, "Hey, that's my image," it's a little CYA. And also, I know that's not likely to happen because we're pulling images from a trusted source
Yep.
that we have permission to use from, that we're buying these images. Now, there are plenty of other sources out there like Pexels, Pixabay. There are a couple other free ones out there. But even with Pexels, I know that some of the photographers have come back and said, "Oops, I guess I don't want it out there anymore." And people have gotten in trouble for using images from those royalty-free sites.
Yep.
So, yeah, you're not doing anything wrong by using images from those sites. And I'm going to tell you that first and foremost. But you are taking a little bit of a chance rolling the dice in that someone will come along and say, "Oh, I don't want you to use my work anymore." Are they going to be
Hmm.
like Getty and sue you? Probably not. If you're adamant, they're probably just going to ask you to replace the image.
Yep. Yep.
Is it
There
a pain
was,
in the butt? Yeah. But are you going to get sued? Probably not.
and it was funny. I had a client, a former client last year, if you recall, was in the travel business, and they wanted to use images off a stock photo site without paying for them. They were like, just take screen grabs of them. And I'm like, no, legally and ethically, I can't do that. And they're like, well, I'll do it. And I'm like, then I'm not working with you because, ethics are everything. And and even worse than that business, why wouldn't you take your own images? You're in the travel business. Real images are 10 times better, and then you know exactly where they came from.
Exactly. I had a conversation today with a designer that I partner up with on projects, and another partner that we're working with um, actually takes the time to set up photo shoots for clients
Yep.
and direct the photo content of the actual product and the location.
Yep.
And, forget stock photos, but take stock in your own images
Yep.
and own your own content.
It's cool.
You're absolutely right. Um, People want to, see what they're getting exactly. And,
Yep.
so we always talk about owning your assets. Well, that show off your assets with your own photography.
Yeah. I have, as you know, a well-known client who's got a big independent jewelry store, and all their Instagram images are their own shots of their own
Mhm.
jewelry, and it works out 10 times better. And we never worry about copyright because I know exactly, excuse me, where they're coming from, and that's a big deal. And frankly, it's showing off their own inventory, so
Mhm.
it's a win-win-win-win. You know,
Yeah,
so
you can't go wrong there. That's the best scenario is taking shots of your own product, which
yeah.
you already own the patent on, I'm assuming.
Hmm. Hmm. How do you lay out your contracts? Do you kind of, I know with me, it says all the images are the property and responsibility of the website owner. How do you lay yours out?
So I have a clause because I work with clients of all different levels.
Yep.
As much as we'd like to include professional photography, a lot of times they don't. Um, and so I include a line item for photography and other design work. And in my terms of service, I have a lifetime use allowance for that client, where I I retain the copyright and ownership of those pieces produced, but they have a lifetime use license. And some people disagree with that, and I certainly do in some instances, and maybe amending my contract in the future to turn those over to the client.
Mhm.
But certainly ownership of assets and who owns what is something that you really need to define.
It's true. And I think you need to do it legally, because if the image comes in content, can the designer be sued? Can the website owner be sued? Like,
Mhm.
that's an issue too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, everyone can come under scrutiny and be liable if they know that if they're knowingly putting up someone else's content, then you as a web designer just as culpable and liable as your client. Just like your instance, when your client told you they were going to use stolen images, that's someone else's labor and their product that they put time in to set up a photo shoot, do the photography, do the retouching, and editing, and put that out there for another business to come along and steal that and claim it as their own is not only wrong, but it's unethical and it's illegal.
Yeah. Forget the ethics. Forget the legality. I just have an ethics standpoint. I'd be ticked off if somebody stole my work and my proprietary work. So why am I? And you know what's funny? They didn't see anything wrong with what they were doing, Ryan. They just didn't care, and that's even worse of
Right.
a problem.
Exactly. That's not. That's just one. Going through the action of doing it, but not having the moral compass to understand that that's a problem that they're taking from someone else. That's one of the biggest red flags. To tell me that I don't want to work with that client.
Oh, I agree with you. Um, when you've had to sit a client down and have this discussion, where does it usually go? Are the clients receptive with you, or do they kind of look at you and say, "Oh, who cares? It won't happen to me"?
I've actually never had any negative responses when I explain that we need to be ethical about sourcing logos and photography
Yep.
content, and we need to make sure that we own outright all the content. And that includes the client logo. I had one instance where the client had a logo and it looked really familiar. Um, Turns
Hmm.
out it was a logo that they liked that was from another business, not anywhere near us locally, but it
Yep.
looked familiar that I had seen it in the niche. And I said, "Hey, you're going to get in trouble for likeness, and if your business grows large enough, they will see it and you will be sued because they'll put two and two together." And that client didn't really see the problem because there were a lot of logos like that. And I said, sure, there are a lot of people on Fiverr that have templates that do similar logos, but this was almost verbatim from one of their competitors out of state,
Yep.
and they were a little bit upset about that. But after some coaching and letting them know what the legal ramifications are and the possible fines and penalties, both civil and criminal, they decided to get a new logo redesign for not a lot of cash, and they said this is a lot cheaper than getting in trouble. You're right.
Yeah. I would also say too, make sure you have the right type of license for what you're using. So, for example, on this podcast, the first thing is a trailer, is a header that I had done by voiceover. Do you know the licensing to use it in a podcast cost me as much as the voiceover did itself?
I can
So,
see that. Yeah,
yeah.
I
And
you know,
somebody
and
got bent, sorry, somebody got bent out of shape and said, you know, that's kind of expensive. I said, no, licensing is part of the product. So you got to understand that, right?
Absolutely. I'm a firm believer that you should get paid for what you do. And I had a tweet today. I said, I spent the last year going through and marking down all the little things
Mhm.
that I do and realized that there was a lot of things that I was giving away. Now imagine if you're not even giving it away, but somebody just steals your work and you're not even compensated for it.
Yeah,
That's even more frustrating. So,
yeah,
protecting your work by here's the other side of that. Not everyone files for trademark or copyright.
mm,
As a former print graphic designer and logo designer, that's extremely important to at least file to file that you own your logo.
yeah,
Uh, it's a pain in the butt if you have to go to court to prove that this is your likeness that you've been using for X number of years and it's necessary to your business versus going to file for your copyright or for your trademark. It's not a difficult process, it's not expensive, and if you create something original, you should absolutely do it.
yeah.
Intellectual
The
properties,
yeah. The only exception to that in Canada is if your initials are part of the logo or part of the domain name, you are legally allowed to use it. Trademark is implied.
Mhm,
So years ago, and I like to share this story, I had a domain name that was called rbcconsulting.com. Well, RBC is a well known trademark of the Royal Bank of Canada, and banks have big
mhm.
money. So they called me up and they said, take that down or we'll sue you. I said, you can try, except for one problem. RBC are the initials of my name, which legally allows me to use it despite the bank having a trademark on it.
Right.
So how that went was the bank actually asked me to. They ended up buying the domain name for lots of money in the end. Believe it or not.
That's another thing. And when we talk about ownership, we haven't touched on domain names.
Yeah,
I know, uh, I have the dot solutions ending on my domain name. I look for onedog.com, and there's a broker that's got it, and he's
yeah,
approached me several times. But when I was starting out, I think the first number he floated was $5,000. And I said, I know it's worth more than that. So he just wants me to start there to bid it up. And at some point, I'll probably buy it because I want it. But is it absolutely necessary? It depends on your industry and how much you're willing to pay for that extra business.
yeah.
Domain names are important. Um, so that's another thing that another asset that you should be cared to own.
Yeah, yeah, no question. I actually own the .com and the .ca and the .info and right. So
Hmm.
because of that whole schmoz, and when we talk domain names, just because we're talking about it, it's actually worth registering all the common ones around yours, so somebody doesn't squat on
Hmm.
them and then come back to you and say, "Oh, you can have this, but we'll charge you X dollars," right? So
Exactly. And you end up paying, you know, uh, you can end up paying a lot in domain fees, but you're also protecting your assets. And
yeah, it's
it's that one's another one that's really important to make sure that you maintain ownership. Um, oh, who was it? Just recently, a, a fairly well-known SaaS had problems with their domain registration, and I saw their Twitter, and it said, "Oops, we had a payment problem with renewing our domain, and it'll be rectified shortly." Well, they had to pay somebody off because somebody else bought it up from under them,
yeah.
and owning your assets and making sure that you have the proper rights to them, including your domain name. That one's important too.
Yeah. And by the way, if they had a problem with their domain name, and we need to understand domain names go into a grace period. So that means they also sat on it thinking the problem would disappear instead of
Mhm.
dealing with it on day one. They would have known their payment didn't go through. Like there's more
There's a
here than
really it's a really long grace period that you get.
it's like
Um,
40 days.
yeah, it's several 30-day periods. I think it's almost 90 days is what I remember from Google.
Yeah.
Working with different political candidates and clients that buy their names one time and then let them go
Yeah.
if they don't win. It seeing the reminders a couple months later, and like I thought this was already gone. Um, you have a long grace period on those.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we've given some listeners a few tips. Do you have anything you wanted to wrap up with in a quick tip or
I I think we've covered the main ones. Make sure that you own the rights to assets that you're using. And especially one thing that we left out with the photos, there's editorial license and
yeah,
advertorial licensing. Make sure
right.
that you have the proper one because if you're going to use an image in a stock image in advertising, I would urge you not to. And use your own photography with your own products and your own services. But sometimes you want an image in an advertisement, make sure that you get the right license.
No,
Generally, advertising licensing for stock photography can be up to 10 times more than the editorial license. So that's the only thing that I don't think that we covered with the image assets is when you buy a license for use, make sure you get the right one.
yeah, so true. Thanks, Ryan, and have a wonderful day as always. Appreciate it.
You as well.
Thank you. Bye bye. This podcast is brought to you by Stunning Digital Marketing, the digital marketing agency for all your business needs. We are also your WordPress security experts, having over 14 years of experience locking down, backing up, and protecting WordPress websites. Go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com for more info or stunningdigitalmarketing.info for links to everywhere we can be found on the web. A very special thank you to Ryan Waterbury for joining me on this edition of the SDM Show. Hey, everybody, Rob here again. Thanks for listening to the SDM Show. It's such a pleasure to have you every week. If you want more on our agency website, go to stunningdigitalmarketing.com. We are your WordPress security experts. We'd be glad to help you out. If you want to learn more about me, Rob Cairns, go to meetrobcairns.online. From there, you can find links to everything I do on the web, as well as book time with me. So feel free. If you want to make comments about this podcast or know a guest possibly suitable for the podcast, please email us at podcast@stunningdigitalmarketing.com. Or conversely, you can go to X, formerly known as Twitter, and tweet at me at Rob Cairns. This podcast is dedicated to my late father, Bruce Cairns. Dad, I miss you very much, and I love you. Please join us next week for another interesting podcast, and have a great week, everybody. Bye for now.